Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open the playbook of some of the most successful invaders on Earth, pathogenic bacteria. We're going to break down, step by step, the incredibly sophisticated strategies these microscopic organisms use to outsmart and overwhelm our own body's defenses.
And it's a great question, right? How does that even happen? Well, the answer isn't brute force. It's a microscopic battle of wits and weapons, a kind of biochemical warfare. And to really understand how we fight an infection, first we've got to understand the enemy's game plan. So first things first, let's define our main character here. A pathogen, as you can see, is any microorganism that can cause disease. And for our purposes today, we're zeroing in on the bacteria that have become absolute masters of the art. But here's the thing, not all pathogens are created equal. Their power level, if you will, is measured by something called virulence. This is basically the sum of all their tools and tactics, everything from their genetics to their physical structure that lets them cause harm. It's the size and sophistication of their entire arsenal. Okay, so every successful invasion has to start with a beachhead. For a bacterium, the very first, most critical step isn't to attack. It's just to find a place to land and then hold on for dear life. You see, our bodies are not just passive environments. They're like fortresses with these really powerful built-in defenses. I mean, think about it. Saliva, the flow of mucus, even just coughing and sneezing. All of these things are designed to physically wash away and kick out any potential invaders. So to cause an infection, a bacterium first has to figure out how to avoid being evicted. So how on earth do they stay put? Well, bacteria have evolved these incredible little tools called adhesins. You can think of them as molecular grappling hooks or like a biological superglue. They allow them to physically latch onto our cells and just refuse to be washed away. And they have all kinds of different ways to do this. Some, like E. coli, use these little hair-like things called fimbriae to lock onto specific sugars on our cells. Others, like Pseudomonas, use pilae to help them build these protective communities called biofilms. And some even build an entire outer shell of S-layer proteins just to colonize a surface. It's pretty amazing. All right, so let's build on that. Once a bacterium is stuck on tight, its next big challenge is to avoid our body's 24/7 security patrol. It has to find a way to become invisible. See, we've got these security guards patrolling our tissues all the time. They're immune cells called phagocytes, which literally means eating cells. Macrophages and neutrophils are the main ones, and their whole job is to find, engulf, and totally obliterate any foreign bacteria they come across. So to get around this, some bacteria have developed this incredible defense. They produce a capsule. It's this slimy, slippery outer layer made of sugars, and it basically acts like an invisibility cloak. It physically stops the phagocytes from being able to get a good grip to eat the bacterium. And here's where it gets wild. This defense is so good that it can backfire on us in a huge way. When one of our phagocytes can't grab its target, it gets, well, frustrated. It knows an enemy is there, so it starts screaming for help by releasing these chemical alarms called cytokines. But since the enemy is still there, this constant alarm can trigger a massive inflammatory response that ends up damaging our own healthy tissues. A true master of this cloaking strategy is Streptococcus pneumoniae. You probably know it as the main cause of bacterial pneumonia. And get this, to show you just how good it is at hiding, it has evolved at least 90 different chemical variations of its capsule. 90. That makes it an incredibly slippery target for our immune system to handle. Okay, quick recap. The bacterium has landed, it's stuck on tight, and it's hiding from the guards. So what's next? Well, now it's time to go on the offensive. This is where the invaders roll out their most powerful and damaging weapons, toxins. We can basically sort these weapons into two big buckets. On one side, you have exotoxins. These are proteins that living bacteria actively shoot out to attack very specific targets. On the other side are endotoxins. These aren't really weapons so much as they are part of the bacterium's own body, its cell wall. They get released when the bacterium dies and falls apart, and they cause a much more general, system-wide inflammation. Now, some of the most sophisticated exotoxins are these things called AB toxins. They work like two-part smart bombs. The B part, for binding, is the delivery system. It finds the exact right target cell and acts like a key to get inside. Once it's in, it releases the A part, the active subunit, and that's the warhead.
it gets to work sabotaging a critical function inside our cell.
And you can see just how precise and devastating these weapons are. The cholera toxin hijacks our intestinal cells and forces them to pump out water. Tetanus toxin blocks nerve signals, leading to that terrifying paralysis of lockjaw. And diphtheria toxin, it just goes in and shuts down a cell's ability to make proteins, basically killing it from the inside out.
But it's not just about precision weapons. Bacteria also bring in the heavy machinery, a kind of demolition crew. These spreading factors are enzymes designed to just tear down the structure of our tissues. Hyaluronase dissolves the biological cement holding our cells together, while collagenase chews through the collagen in our muscles, just clearing a path for the infection to spread even deeper. But maybe the most insidious strategy of all isn't about what bacteria do to us directly. It's about how they can manipulate our own bodies into doing the damage for them. And this is such a critical point to understand. Sometimes the biggest danger isn't the invader. It's our own body's absolutely massive overreaction to it. Our immune system is there to protect us. But when it's pushed too far, it can go completely haywire and become the main threat itself. And that overreaction can lead to something truly terrifying called septic shock. This is when the body's response to an infection becomes so dysregulated, so out of control, that it starts to injure its own tissues and organs. The security alarm is basically blaring so loudly that the whole system starts to collapse. So what kicks this whole disaster off? Often, it's those endotoxins we talked about earlier, the actual pieces of the bacterial cell wall. Our immune system sees these fragments and treats it as a red alert for a massive invasion. That triggers this overwhelming flood of inflammatory alarm signals, which is what causes the circulatory collapse and organ failure we see in septic shock. This constant high-stakes battle between our immune systems and these bacterial invaders has basically created one of the most intense evolutionary arms races on the entire planet. It's forced bacteria to become true masters of adaptation and disguise. And one of their ultimate survival tricks is something called antigenic variation. This is the incredible ability to constantly change their surface proteins, the very things our immune system learns to recognize and remember. It's like a spy who keeps changing their disguise. Just when our immune system figures them out, poof, they've changed their coat, and our body has to start the learning process all over again. And that really brings us to the final, critical question. From sticking around and hiding to using toxins and turning our own body against us, we've seen just how sophisticated these bacteria are. As we develop new antibiotics and new vaccines, we're really just making the next move in this ancient, ongoing game. The real question is, what's their countermove going to be?